Still getting people off. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Writers Chat. We are very excited today because we have a special guest, Tamsen Horton, with us, and she has been here with us before. But she is a sweet friend and the person who pulled me into Kajabi, which is a system that we love, so I'll always be grateful to her for that. And actually, she toured the Kajabi headquarters recently. You were in California doing that, which is incredible. So we can talk about Kajabi maybe at the end as like a bonus kind of thing. But today we're talking about trademarks. And so I just want to welcome all of our co-hosts, and I'm going to introduce Tamsen, and then we're going to jump right in. So we have Jean Wise, author at healthyspirituality.org, devotional writer. And then Johnny Alexander, who is hit the bestseller list. I always have to say this, novelist. And then our guest, Tamsen Horton. Yeah. Just like you, there is no shortage of the different roles that Tamsen takes on in any given day. She has seamlessly blended her roles as a mother, business executive, and lawyer to give her the unique perspective and platform to not simply talk about ideas and how to create them, but also to make sure that what you are working so hard to build is safely protected, personally and professionally. Most recently, she released her debut book, Easy as PB&J, with her husband, Chris, where they use their stories to help you learn how to share what you know and make money doing it. She truly enjoys connecting with like-minded and inspired individuals, so please feel free to reach out through social media or via email and let her know how she can serve you. And I just want you to know Tamsen is one of the sweetest people. She's got 2 adorable little boys, and it has been truly a pleasure watching you live out your mission, which is the vacationing life, in creating balance. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Tamsen. I'm excited. We can talk about all kinds of things. Copyright, trademark is the beginning, and then we can jump into a lot. So welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I find that this always goes so well when you guys are asking me questions, because with law, there are so many ways to go about it, but it's always best when you get the answers that you want. So as I'm giving you guys just a little bit of background, feel free to pop questions in, because I really don't want to talk about the stuff that's like going to bore you to death. I'd like to talk about the stuff you're like, oh, I'm dying to know about this, or I heard this. Is this really how it works? Because that's usually false. It's always, I love the people that go to what I lovingly refer to as the Google Law School. Those are my favorite people in the whole wide world, because they're so knowledgeable, especially in Facebook groups. And as a lawyer, I just stand back and go, really? Really? No, Google does not have law school. Nice try. Okay, cool. Rebecca has a question. Is it true that it's rare to need to copyright your writing? It's changed. I'll say that. It has changed over the years. Before we had all of the digital that we have, there is copyright law, and obviously, there's lots of copyright battles in terms of, screenplays and movies and music and books and who has the right to books. So copyright it's one of the tools in your toolbox. What you have to know is it the right tool for your writing? Uh-huh. When you're in law school, it's jokingly referred to that as soon as new lawyers start learning the law, we all have been given this hammer, and suddenly everything in the world looks like a nail, and we have to hit it.
I'm taking a law class next quarter, and I'm so afraid that I'm just going to examine every little thing that we're doing.
It's the same way in medical fields. Every disease you study, you got.
So absolutely.
Legally, it's the same way.
Yes. So what I tell people is, when it comes to copyright and your writing, you have to know what the writing is. Do not spend the time, money, and or energy to copyright your blog posts. Not worth it. What you do want to do when it comes to something as prolific as blog posts is, if you have a phrase, I typically will say every business decision has a legal impact point. I say it all the time. So knowing that typically would show up in my out in the world writing, the stuff that's, I might update it, I might change it, which is why I don't want to spend time copywriting it, because I'm going to change it, or I'm going to move it, or really, am I seriously going to enforce someone who rips off a blog post? No, not worth my time. It's not, it's not going on the Today Show tomorrow. Like, yeah. But what you do is you set up Google alerts. So instead of using copyright law, which is time consuming, confusing, and honestly a waste of your time, if you have a phrase, try to insert that phrase in your writing. Set up a Google alert for that phrase. Then let's say someone rips you off. Bing, you're going to get a Google alert right away. So it helps in a very easy way, because people do, they rip off stuff all the time. And it makes it very easy to say, oh, yep, you ripped it off. And then you can decide, do I need to take action against this? Do I just need to send them a, scary letter that usually stops most of them? Doesn't have to technically be legal. That's why, for those of you that don't know, I did not set out to be a lawyer. I became a lawyer after being in business for many years, and I didn't care for lawyers. And I figured the only way to beat them was to join them and figure out why they were a wee bit nutty. That's why I went to law school. Law school was not I had no aspirations of, hey, I will be a lawyer. No, it was not like that. It was more like, I can't stand these men. What the heck? I'm doing all the work and they're getting all the money. What do I have to do? They said, you have to go to law school to get your little stamp. I said, no, fine. I'm going to law school to get a little stamp. Probably an extreme reaction, not one most people take, but it's worked out rather well. So for your writing that might go, New York Times, or you're gonna, it's going like big, you want it in Library of Congress, like you want all that registration, then yes, go through. Copyright registration is $35, but you can't change it. Like, that's for like the official stuff. So easy as PB&J. It's copyrighted because we wrote it and we put it into a fixed format. I did not send it through, though, to copyright.gov. So if someone were to, rip it off, most people know that Chris and I are the peanut butter people, so I'm really not that afraid. Like,
yeah.
So it's more about knowing what the writing is, what your purpose in trying to protect it is, which for most people, they don't want their site ripped off. They don't want their blog posts ripped off. They don't want their ebooks. Google alerts, affordable, easy. And the other benefit is when people are sharing it for a good reason, you also get alerted. So that's a great tip.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes you can find reviews, like maybe you didn't know someone was going to review your book. And if you have that Google alert set up, you'll get that notification, which is really cool to be able to keep track of those things.
Yeah.
Yes. I actually had a guy, I have a Google alert on my name, and he had written a blog post in anger after I wrote a blog post. I wouldn't have known that. And I didn't do anything about it. He didn't have a lot of followers. And I was like, well, if he took the time to do that, my name is out there, one more Google SEO on another But it was helpful to have the Google alert because I never would have found it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's, when you're doing Google alerts, do them for programs you're running or events you're running or online, if you're doing online education, online courses. Set up Google alerts for those things that you'd want to know about. Like, if somebody said good or bad, I'd like to know about it.
Yeah.
And then it's free, it's easy, and then it allows you to make the decision of, do I really need to pursue legal over this? Because there are some key pieces to pursue legal on, but for 99% of us, it's just not worth paying the attorneys what you'd have to pay them to recover. Unless it's well over $250,000, it's not worth it for copyright.
Oh, wow. That's a big number.
Wow, that is a high number.
Yes, because it is a complicated area of law, and most often the creator hasn't done the necessary steps they needed to do in the first place. So it becomes very difficult trying to prove a he said, she said argument. So it's why you typically will see them regarding record labels or movie houses, because the money is there. You're not going to see it in lower stuff because you're going to be paying an attorney $500 to $1,000 an hour. And I mean, honestly, you're looking at 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 hours, and that's on the low end. So that's why I say to most people, don't panic about copyright, be proactive, get the alerts set up. And then, yes, you can copyright your work, but you can't change it. And that's where most entrepreneurs get into trouble is they change it. And you're like, you changed it. It's now that version was copyrighted.
Wow.
This version isn't. So you're much better. You're much better promoting your work, because I see so many people, they create it and then they stop talking about it. Like, oh, that was great. I wrote this thing. I did this thing. Okay, you're going to talk about it now? Like, I'd rather see them put their energy on promoting it than trying to protect it.
Yeah, that's a good point. In fact, actually, I listened to a podcast this morning, and she kind of said the same thing, that, we've got these backlists of things that put as much time on these things that we've created that maybe 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And we are getting distracted by spending too much time on something else, That's a great piece of advice. Can you talk a little bit about fair use? I accidentally put in the chat room fear use, so it does strike a fear in many writers, but it seems like that is always a vague area where writers get confused on how much they can use and how do they have to do different things. Can we use Bible quotes in our work and that sort of stuff? Can you give us some background on fair use?
I sure can. And Bethany, will you send me an email that says to give you the link to my fair use worksheet? Because I'll give you guys a link to that.
Great.
Yay.
Before I forget. You can be my digital secretary on this one.
I'm ready.
So, yes, fair use is one of the most misunderstood and misapplied legal functions. First of all, it is a defense. So that means someone has already accused you of copyright infringement. So it is a defense. It is a, hey, Tamsen, you committed copyright infringement. And then I raise my hand and I say, yes, I did. However, I have this get out of jail free card. Now, I speak in a lot of metaphors, so I don't want any of you thinking you're going to jail for fair use. But this is how you guys will remember this stuff, okay? So, but I've learned I have to buffer this because someone's like, you could go, no, you can't go to jail. But most of us have played Monopoly, and you're like, oh, I have a get out of jail free card. That is the metaphorical equivalent of a fair use defense. And that's the most important thing to know, is you use it to defend yourself, which means someone has already accused you of doing something wrong. What fair use does, it is what we call in the legal realm, it's a balancing test. So there's a number of factors that come into play. And what you're doing is picture, two scales, and you have a bunch of little sticks. And one stick says, was this for educational purposes? And you say, yep, it sure was. It goes over here on this side as, yes, it's fair use. Then you say, was I just using like a map, or was I using, a generic quote? Bible is a great example. Any kind of, encyclopedia, like that kind of stuff. You're typically going to land on the fair use thing versus if I was using, Stephen Covey's book and I built an entire course around it and I really didn't change that much, not going to look like so much like fair use. So it's a gray area of law, lots of different shades because of the balancing test. So what you want to do, and Bethany will remind me, I will send you guys a link where you can get this worksheet, is when you're creating something, have as part of your writing process, if you're using stuff that's going to trigger fair use. When I wrote Easy as PB&J, I was not triggering fair use because it was all coming out of me. However, there were some standard personal development exercises. Yeah. Ideal day, be, do, have. Those I'm not triggering fair use because they're fair game. They're open to all of us. No one has, a right to that. But as you're writing, in part of your process, you want to be using a fair use checklist, a fair use worksheet, so that you can say, I'm using this, and then you run through those factors and say, yeah, no, I'm not triggering this. So you're basically preparing your defense ahead of time. So you're proactively using it. And this is how law works. You always have to reverse engineer things. So you're reverse engineering no, this wasn't, one, I didn't do it. And even if I did do it, this is why it isn't going to count. So it depends, again, on the writing, what you're using it for, that kind of stuff. But that's big picture fair use. Does that
It's
answer
a
your
tool
question?
a writer needs to be aware of, it sounds like.
What?
It's a tool the writer needs to be aware of.
I would say yes.
Yeah.
Especially depending on what you're writing, where you're publishing, how you're using it.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, if you're in a true educating platform, meaning you're being employed by a school or a university, you're creating like curriculum stuff, you're going to fall into that category. However, now that all of us can create and sell things, people say, oh, well, I'm in education, so I'm okay. No. When the law came out, it was not contemplating online entrepreneurs selling courses. That is not the same as the university professor who created XYZ thing. And it's another really important thing to keep in mind when you're dealing with law. Law is the garbage truck. Okay? Law, I said, metaphors, you guys will not forget this stuff. That is my goal. Don't forget this stuff. Law is cleanup crew. Okay, we come behind when messes have been made. Business is the one pushing the boundaries. Like business is creating, and then it's like, oh, by the way, it's caused some issues. Okay, now we start making some laws to hopefully fix the issues.
Yeah.
So law comes about a good 10 years behind. Typically, it can be even longer. And it's very slow to act. Very rarely does a law get passed. I mean, you guys all watch the news. It doesn't go quickly. And the reason it can't go quickly is they have to make it generic enough to pull in what they need to, but specific enough so that the lawyers, we can figure out how to interpret it and put it onto a new set of facts. So yeah, law is always coming along 10 years behind, which is really fun when you're on the cutting edge of live streaming and all these things, because people are like, hey, what about this? I'm like, well, wait 10 years, we'll find out.
So until then, we're free to do whatever we want.
Yeah. Please stop playing other people's music on your periscopes. That I can tell you right now.
Yeah,
that's
I was going to ask you about that, about music and about song lyrics, because we see people do that, and I think
bad.
Those can be very tricky. Yeah.
Yeah, do not play people's music on your live streams or your shows. That is asking for trouble.
And the same with music lyrics in books. I mean, we've been talking about this because even in my contract with the publisher, if I did that, I bore all responsibility when I signed that. Like they were very clear that if anyone came after you for anything like that, it was on me. And then the reason that, and then you can expand on this if you want to. I think the bottom line for music lyrics is because you can do a percentage of a quote. You can quote a percentage of a work, but because a song is so small, the percentage that you're using is so high that that's one reason why the music and poems are no-nos pretty much, unless you have permission. Is that right? No? Oh, we've been saying the wrong thing now.
Yeah. So here's another total misinformation. In the law, when it comes to I can do this percentage, what that is it's a sound bite that has gotten picked up and pulled out of probably an 87-page brief regarding that case, where the judges were explaining their reasoning for why you can't do it. And so what people do, I think they did this with, what is it? Dub Smash. What was it a couple years ago? And they were like, I can do 7 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, nowhere in the law does it say 7 seconds and under and you're fine. Copyright infringement is copyright infringement. You can't do it. Now, you have to know that there's this Bermuda Triangle for law. There is the pure law in one corner. There is practical life, and there is social media. It is a three-way tug of war at play all the time. So yes, pure law, and we'll use, was it Dub Smash? Is that what that app was?
Oh, yeah.
Pure law, copyright infringement. Yes. Did the court cases say when they were trying to apply something to a different set of facts in a different scenario that, hey, this wasn't copyright infringement because it was such a small portion and it didn't relate to the key thing? Well, then some news person picks that up and puts that all over the evening news and puts that all over in blog posts, and Google lawyers go to town. Like everyone goes to Google Law School when something like that comes out. They all attend that class. 7 seconds, I'm fine. 30 minutes, I'm fine. 20%, I'm fine.
Yeah.
No, you're not. You're not. Law school's more than read a Google article. But the pure law it's copyright infringement. Practically speaking, is the people that own it going to put the money, the time, and the effort to go after the silly little app that has now been created that is technically probably drawing attention to their copyrighted work that's been sitting on a dusty old shelf forever? Yeah. Does that make it right? No. But from the practical aspect, the song owner, the lyric owner, whoever it is, they have the right to determine, do they sue? Well, they have to look at what their lawyers are going to cost, what the time and effort. I mean, you're looking at, for any kind of a lawsuit involving intellectual property, you figure you're at 3 years.
Wow.
Okay? Wow. This stuff does not get fixed in 2 weeks. It has to, it is, when I say long, I mean, it is freaking long, and it's expensive, and most will settle out of court. But the practical aspect is the person whose work is being infringed, are they going to go after it? Like, does it even make sense? Then you have the social aspect. And, what's the blonde? She's not such a teeny bopper anymore. Not, gosh.
Taylor Swift?
Taylor Swift. Thank you. You read my mind. So Taylor Swift gets so much social media backlash when she goes after people that are using her song lyrics, are using her phrases, like stuff that she has legal protection on. She gets a lot of social backlash. Like, I can't believe Taylor would go after those poor 2 little girls who just, wanted to do XYZ. They just love her, and that was just so mean. Well, Taylor doesn't have a choice. If she wants to keep the legal protection, she has to go after the big bad wolf and the cute 3 little pigs. Like, she can't discriminate. And so the social media part, brand owners also have to take into account of, just ask Tony Robbins. It's so much fun cleaning up a media mess. And his wasn't copyright, but that viral, you're in the spotlight for way more than 15 minutes. So you have this triangle which is why your publisher says, fine, put them in, but it is all on you. Because if anything goes down, they are taking themselves out of the Bermuda Triangle.
And leaving you in.
Right. If you want to stay in that Bermuda Triangle, by all means, you feel free to stay in the Bermuda Triangle. If you come out alive, we're happy to see you. If not, probably last book we're going to do with you.
Wow.
But you can always reach out to the owner of the work and say, if it's critical that you have it in there, like if it is just, this can't exist without it, which is so rarely the case, you can just refer to it. Like, as the lyrics in blah, blah, blah song, you're not in trouble.
But that was the question in the chat. Can you use a phrase like the song title? Taylor Swift sang such and such.
Yeah, you can refer out.
This. Yeah.
Totally. And that's what I tell people is refer out, because if I'm a reader, I have Google. I can pull up that song if I need to. I don't need to read it in your book. But if it's like essential, where something is just hanging on it, being on that page, reach out to the owner. Some of them are like, no problem. And they'll give you written permission. You file it away in your little book file and you're good to go. So people say, well, I saw it in this book, or what was it with songs? Somebody one time really got into me over American Idol. I said, dude, every song they're doing, they probably own the rights to it because they're probably the record label with their parent company. So yes, they can use the song on American Idol because I'm pretty sure they cleared it with co-counsel. Like, I'm fairly certain the parent company of whatever TV show that is probably owns the rights to the person who did the whatever song.
It's probably why certain songs get selected, because they have the rights and other ones. Yeah.
They had a playlist.
Yeah, I just saw a lady do new lyrics to the Hallelujah song. What is it? Cohen? Who wrote that? Cohen? That beautiful Hallelujah song. And she put Christian lyrics to it. And she did it for her church a long time ago. And then so many people said, "Oh, that is so good, can we?" And she says, "No, because you can't do anything that I'd get in trouble." She finally wrote the guy, and he gave her written permission to change to do and she has now released that with his blessing, which is, I thought, really gracious of him, because it's such a beautiful tune. And then here we've got it now with Christian lyrics, then the kind of a little bit odd lyrics that it has in the verses. But I thought that there's a good example of sometimes she was blown away that she got full permission to do that. So
yeah, most people, if you reach out, like I tell people, treat other people's work the way you'd want them to treat your work.
Good point.
Most of the time, especially if it is a smaller individual, they will gladly give permission. They're happy to do it. You run into situations where it gets a little bit trickier if you're trying to navigate something like Sony Pictures or ABC Productions, just because the behemoth that is that entity, you can't always find the person that can say, yep, you can have permission. And even if you find that person, it might take far longer than when you needed to have that permission by. So it becomes a time issue. Like, well, it's going to take us 18 months to get you permission. And you're like, yeah, but I go to print in 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. Not going to work. So again, Bermuda Triangle is always at play. And that's just important to keep in mind, because especially when I'm working with clients, we run into situations. You're like, yep, they ripped you off. Yep, it was crappy. But you didn't legally zip up beforehand. I told you to legally zip up beforehand, and you were too busy creating Canva. So there you go. I run into this all the time. Tamsen, I need you. Okay, this is what we do. Well, I got to make these graphics first. Okay, well, you just go make those graphics, and I'll see you whenever. Oh, crap, I have a mess. I know, but your images in Canva are so pretty. Oh, and you used copyrighted images. Well, they're pretty and they're totally illegal. So now we're going to have an issue over there. But you got to know your triangle and what issues are at play.
Is that right?
Yeah, Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah, I'm that way.
Jessie has a question about quotes from other writers, like at the start of the chapter when you put them in there. Do you need to get permission with that?
Not necessarily. You're not building a work around it. Make sure the quote is as accurate as possible. I think that sometimes, one with all the memes, it's like a game of telephone. Did that person really say it? Or did they copy it from 3 people before, and that type of a deal? I haven't seen people getting in trouble for that. Again, it's a practical social that's balancing that legal. I think we even have it in Easy as PB&J on some of the pieces. Like, I think I even used a quote like from Steve Jobs, or who was another couple that I think we had in there. When you're not building the work around it, and it's a commonly acceptable quote, you should be totally fine. If you have a serious question, then ask your lawyer, because there might be facts and circumstances that would change my answer. But I've used it in my work, and I'm totally like, I could totally defend. Yep, it's right there. It's underneath the thing. What would you like me to do? Take it out of the next issue? Okay, sure. I don't see that as a big, that's usually not.
I like the question, how do you find the copyright owner? Because some of them are unknown or anonymous on that, and they turn around and actually be somebody when you start researching that.
Yeah, definitely go to the copyright.gov website. It is not user-friendly. It is about as user-friendly as the USPTO website is. Not user-friendly. But if you're using something significant, if it is, if I wrote a book that was all quotes, like all these quotes, and it wasn't at the beginning of a chapter meant as inspiration, or at the end of a chapter as like inspiration, or to, ignite discussion about some topic, then yes, I would definitely spend the time researching to find out where are all of these, because I'm significantly building it around other people's copyright information.
Yeah.
And the way that copyright works, because it's not meant to stagnate creativity. It's actually meant to promote the arts and useful sciences. That's the whole purpose of copyright law. And it's that blending. I don't like to use the word balancing because it's hard. It's the blending of the person that wrote it getting credit for it, being able to earn a living, their reputation, all of that, and people being able to interact with it. So it's a blending of these two, and we want it to look good, not like some horrendous, plaid with polka dot outfit or something like that. Yeah. But when it's in your brain, it's not protected. When it comes out of your brain into a fixed format, there's various definitions on fixed format, but basically the easiest way to remember it is if someone else could interact with it, because it's out of your mushy brain, it's going to count as fixed format. So you write a song, you do a dance, you record an audio, you make a video, you write a book, all of that. The minute you do it, you have copyright protection, but nobody knows about it. Like I write all kinds of brilliant work on my laptop at 12 a.m. when my little boys are sleeping. Nobody knows about it. Nobody knows about it. Now, I might publish it and some people know about it, but the next step is copyright registration. This is when you tell the government, hey, I wrote this genius work at midnight while my boys were sleeping. I'd like you to know about it for $35 because if anyone rips me off, I want to sue them for $10 million. The government says, great, thanks so much. Your name's on the book. If someone infringes, yes, we'll pull up the file and you may take it to court. So there's a difference, mushy in your brain, fixed format, someone else can handle it, and then tell the government what you did. So that when you need to pull it up in court, you've got the piece of paper.
Wow. I love what you said about why copyright exists, about the interaction.
I do too. The blend.
Yeah. Like I was telling my mom last week, going into pulling up the grad school thing with the academic writing, my first term paper, I felt like I had to have all the answers and all the solutions. And the professor said, this is not about that. This is about you taking other people's work, adding to it so that someone else can add to you. And that changed the perspective of how to write a research paper in a big way, because I wasn't responsible for the answer. I was responsible for adding so that it can be continued. And so it's like a living, breathing thing, which I thought was fantastic. So I love that, Tamsen. Like if you think about your work that way, where it's not just yours, it's yours for someone else to add.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, you think about anything any of us create is because of our experiences, our exposure, our learning. So it's like you have all this, and I always tell people, think about your brain as a funnel. It's all going in, and then you're adding, you're putting all of your interpretation on it. As it comes out, it goes out into the world. That's why I tell people, don't freak out about protecting it, because you use stuff that other people didn't freak out about protecting. Right. Now, at the end of the day, once it comes out, it needs to look more like Bethany or more like Jean or more like Leslie than it did John, Tim, Susie, Jennifer, whoever. If it comes out looking more like John, Tim, Susie, Jennifer, you're probably in the copyright infringement land. But if it looks more like you, then you have done exactly what you just said, Bethany. I took what I had, I ran it through me, and here is my take on it, my interpretation on it, my technically the derivative use of
Mm-hmm.
it. But yes, that's what copyright does. It's not a fence it in. It's a, how do we protect the blending of these two competing interests using it so that arts and useful sciences continue to proliferate.
Love that.
I love that too. And that's in reality how we work. We have read a lot of books, and I'm kind of scared as a nonfiction writer, the amount of reading that I do, that something like that, a phrase or a term was going to pop up in my writing. And I think it's mine just because it was buried in my subconscious 2 years ago from that book. So that idea of blending and is really kind of puts me at ease a little bit more. Rebecca's mentioned a couple times parodies. Is that why they can get away with some of the stuff that they do? You know, the funny lyrics, somebody rewrites a song on a funny lyrics, or
there's
Saturday Night Live type thing.
There's whole different areas of law that go into parodies. And you have not just the intellectual property, but you have the figure that's usually at play, or the situation that's typically at play. That's a whole other set of law. So it was actually interesting because I'm speaking in Toronto in a few weeks at a international lash convention, eyelash extensions. And I was talking to my husband, and because they deal with your eyes. Well, your vision, your eyes, kind of important. Definitely going to trigger some legal things. And so he was asking me, we're driving yesterday, and he's asking me about my talk and how he's putting it together. And I said, well, on the one hand, you have contract law. Did you sign a consent form? Did you get permission? I said, but if that doesn't hold up so well, I said, you could go at them from a criminal perspective, because I can prove assault and battery, if you harmed me while you put my eyelashes on. And he's like, what? I go, well, yeah, that's the beauty of law. Law is like interior design, which is why I love it. There might be, every living room needs a couch and maybe a coffee table and a chair. But I can choose what kind of couch. I can choose the fabrics. I can choose the flooring. I can choose the chairs. Once you know the rules, then you can interpret, which again can be used for good or bad. I like to use it for good. The rest of my profession is not really known for using it for good. But that's another instance where when you're talking about issues, the law has lots of different angles that you could go and pull from, where you're like, you know what, I can't really get them on intellectual property, but I could, for parodies, public figures have different laws associated to them than I do as a person. So there's a whole body of law that's over there, but just know there's a lot at play. And what's usually permissive when you're highlighting, Olympians, presidential figures, public figures, because they've placed themselves in that area of our world, very different than if you were doing it about a private citizen they haven't put themselves out into the world. So
yeah, because that's a great area too, isn't it? Where you are in that, with the public persona, where you're fair game or you're not fair game. Is Wikipedia, if they're on Wikipedia, are they fair game?
Yeah, because they have strict rules about getting on there. I looked it up.
I don't want to be on Wikipedia.
I want to be in Wikipedia, and I can't. Rhonda asked earlier about how do you know when a phrase has been used often enough that it's become common knowledge, ingrained in people's understanding, such as the phrase wear a purple hat. Sorry. Yeah, how do we
trust your gut?
Trust your gut. Love that advice. Love that legal advice.
Trust your gut. If you're building, so tell me, it's always a good idea. I know lawyers seem like the big bad wolf at times, but there are really great ones. Hopefully you guys seeing me will be like, oh, she's kind of cool. She's not that, big bad wolf. It is always a good idea when you are running a business, find an accountant, a CPA that like and trust. I know that seems scary because suddenly it's like, oh, I can't do that. It is the best move you will ever make. find a lawyer, even if you're just starting to follow them on social media or you're like on their email list, find somebody that you could, if you had a question, you could reach out to and start building those try a few on, definitely try a few lawyers on. Because like I said, I became a lawyer because I didn't like them. That should say a lot.
I love that story.
I went into 6-figure debt and put 3 years of my life because I didn't care for these people as a whole. So try a few on, but when you have those questions, like I said, I know like my clients, the people that I have that are in my membership, like the people that are in my circle, Bethany's been in my circle for quite a while. They will send me a message on Facebook Messenger. They'll send me an email. And that's what you want to be able to do when you have this stuff, is someone that you're like, oh, okay, I could reach out and ask you. Now, they might say set up an appointment, depending on what it is. I know that for myself, if it's a really good question, I'm like, great question. You can book an appointment, or I will do a live stream for you, answer your question, and you don't have to pay me. So that's how and a lot of them do that. Like,
yeah,
if I have a really great question, cool. I'm not going to spend 30 minutes telling just you. I will if you want to book an appointment, no problem. But if you just have a general question, you're like, oh, that's perfect. I can wait till a week from Tuesday when you answer it. Perfect. But I would really recommend that to everybody. And a website person. Unless you have Kajabi, we won't need a website person. But if your website gets hacked, you want an accountant, you want the money, the legal, and your site, you want somebody that you can call in. For sure.
It is a business, and I think sometimes as writers we forget that business side of it, and we need to think that. We need to put that hat on. Remember a couple weeks ago when we were wearing hats? We need our business hat.
Yes.
Too. Yeah. On that.
I want to plug your class too, because another thing that Tamsen does is questions that she gets asked a lot, she puts them into a course. And so like I'm a member of her trademark course. And so it's like a one-on-one appointment almost, because you're watching her go through the entire process as you're figuring stuff out. So I just want to say, like, I'll get the link to your Kajabi in here because the class is amazing.
We have a lot more questions, and I have one that I'm sort of holding back. I don't know if we're going to have time to get through them all. Leslie, if you write something and then someone changes it, then it is no longer covered under your copyright as yours. So I think she's going back talking about that earlier conversation we were all having. For example, the 2015 Cinderella movie changed the original Cinderella story because they added to the original, correct? Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
When it comes to movies, what you have to understand is honestly, Mickey Mouse is the reason copyright law changes all the stinking time. Because Mickey Mouse is, and I think, is it 77 years, 71 years? Do not quote me on this. It is 70-something years. From the time you do something for copyright, it's that person's lifetime plus, it used to be 70-something. I'm sure it might have changed at times. They were trying to move it to 99 or whatever. But copyright law really was, I created it. Let's say I created it for myself, 2010. I did copyright registration, meaning I sent it to the government because I've made it at 12 in the morning when the boys were sleeping, and it was brilliant. But the government didn't know. I told them, they said, great, Tamsen, we've got it here. So it's protected from the day you die. You kick the bucket, we'll give your estate another 70-ish, 90-ish years. And then it's open to everybody. It's why the big thing with the Happy Birthday song, when that came out of protection. Well, obviously, Disney does not like a lot of the copyright laws. And so when it comes to movies, when it comes to anything big, okay, really old books that became movies that changed, that became, 87 different versions of whatever it is. There are big law firms, meaning 400 plus attorneys, multiple ones. So let's say there's at least 500 attorneys. There's major movie companies, and they are all using different pieces of law so that when it comes out, if you don't see a lawsuit, they took care of the copyright issues. I couldn't begin to tell you how they took care of them. I don't know who owned them. I don't know if that person's dead. I don't know if their estate gave permission. So when you see stuff like that, just know there was an elephant-sized legal thing going on behind the scenes. I say that to do not apply it to your situation. Do not be like, oh, I loved that movie. I think I'm going to make my own. You may or may not be in trouble. I have no idea. But movies, books that become screenplays, all of that, you're talking mega, like crazy amounts. And now with all of the way companies merge and acquire and all that, people die, don't die, kids, estates. Sorry, it's becoming a very long answer.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's a mess.
I think we get back to something like Cinderella. I mean, there's sources. I mean, that is a fairy tale. That is so far back. I mean, you can sort of adapt your own because no one really has a copyright on the nugget of that story.
Yeah, like people are shocked. They're like, Little Mermaid wasn't created by Disney? No. And that's the other point is there's nothing new that's been created. So again, it's that blending of protecting the creator. They need to earn a living. We can't take, oh, that was an awesome idea, and now we're all making money off of it, and this poor person is on the street with a little cup saying, can I have a nickel? No, that's not fair. Totally not fair. But there's a blending. They also can't be, like a greedy toddler. These are my toys. None of you get to play with them. But I also want legal protection. That's where the government says, great, we'll give you protection, but you don't get to hoard. You can't have your cake and eat it too, type of an experience. So, okay.
One thing I do want to do while we're still on record, because I know we still got questions in the chat. Can you talk about trademark? Yeah. That's our title on here, so I want to make sure you get it in.
You can always schedule another chat, Bethany.
We're going to have to because we've got a couple great questions in there, and I want to talk about contests. So we may have to have you back to talk about contests.
Oh, I would gladly come back and talk about contests. Okay, yeah. What would you guys like to know about trademarking?
I think maybe just a broad question would be, when is it the time where you might need to trademark either a phrase or your company name? Because there's rules about, I just know, and this might be the Google law that we're talking about here, but like you can have more than one company with the same name if they're in different positions. Like Delta Airlines is a way different company than Delta Faucets. And because they won't get confused, they can each have their own trademark for their business. But There's rules with that too about what you can copyright or trademark for a company. So can you just give a little brief explanation? I'm going to encourage everybody to take her trademark class. So this would be like the teaser.
Yeah. So trademark, you need to do trademark at the earliest possible moment it intersects your world. Because when you're building your name around a brand, when you're building your business around a name, I don't really encourage online entrepreneurs or any kind of entrepreneur. Don't worry about taglines and logos and all that because you don't really need the legal protection you think you might. But when it comes to what you're building your business around, if it is not your own name, so I can use Tamsen Horton all day long until I become Oprah Winfrey, at which point I will trademark Tamsen, Martha Stewart. When the brand becomes bigger than the singular person that originated it, then you talk trademarking when it comes to names. None of us are in that boat right now. The other aspect is people will choose a name, and what they don't realize is they didn't do a proper search. So you think you've got this great name, you do a website, you hire a designer, you write a book, you make a course, whatever it is you do, and someone else had a name that was either exactly the same or enough the same to be likely confusing to consumers. If they have the registered trademark, meaning that the government says, yep, in this category, which that is your Delta Airlines, Delta Faucets example, then they can, with literally one letter, and I say it has to be a legit letter because there's scammers everywhere, but a legit letter from someone that has a registered trademark, If you've infringed, you are now vaporized. Wipe out your website, wipe out any brand recognition, wipe out every business card, every course, every Canva graphic. Like,
Wow.
you have to go back to ground zero, which for most people is beyond devastating, like beyond devastating. So the way that you fix that is you run a trademark search. You take, like Jeff said, you take a trademark class where you know, okay, this is what I can and can't do, and here's ways to avoid it. You can have similar names if they're occupying different fields. Delta Airlines, Delta Faucets, not getting confused. Dove Chocolate, Dove Shampoo, not getting confused. There are 45 different categories that you get protection in. And like for, you could get, your name could be protected in the podcast category. Your name could be protected in like online courses category. So they're very broad categories. But it is so important because you wouldn't believe the stuff that people are getting trademarked, and then you use it. And it usually takes, on average, I would say 2 to 3 years for you guys to find each other. If an infringing person goes viral, which again is everyone's dream and legal nightmare all at once, they might find you a bit sooner. But the reality is, if you goof it up, you're vaporized, go back to the beginning, which is devastating. How much does it cost to trademark? To file the actual application, it is, I want to say $250, $260. If you have a made up name, so my law firm from years ago was Vujade Law, easy to trademark when you have a totally made up name once you've done your searching. Then you possibly could do it on your own. If you had a resource, not that you have to buy my course, but if you had a resource like someone walking you through, an attorney that knows how to do it, you could probably DIY it. If you don't have a made up name, use an attorney. It is worth its weight in gold because the USPTO, I've actually moved out. I filed my last one. Gosh, they just finished. I think I just wrapped up my last batch end of March. I'm getting out of the registration because the USPTO is so ridiculously difficult to deal with now.
Wow.
And I've moved on to the front end, like getting people before, like as they're starting their branding, as they're starting their businesses, because I can get them to either avoid it, needing to trademark at all, or making it so that it's so easy they can do it themselves and it'll go through. So I used to do them all the time, and I've gotten out of doing it because it's hard.
Mm.
Sorry, Bethany, that wasn't totally.
That was great, actually. That was awesome.
Yeah, it's like so much.
See, this is why I went to law school, because every time I was in trademark licensing, that's what I did before becoming an attorney. And I was like, oh, why do the attorneys keep saying no to everything? Like, that's a great idea. And the attorney, who was what you would typically think of as an attorney, at least I would, older, white hair, gray man, no personality, thinks he knows everything. No, we're not doing that. I'd be like, well, why? It's a really good idea. No. I was like, this is ridiculous. You guys drive me nuts. I'm going to go get a law degree. And
I love it. One last question about trademark. Can a character or copyrights, can a character be copyrighted? I've seen a lot of manuscripts using Pride and Prejudice characters. But it's no longer protected under copyright because Jane Austen has been dead for longer than.
This is it where you want your attorney on call, because trademark law doesn't have the lifespan that copyright does. So when you have created something and you are going to build something around it, so you want legal protections because that's what you would do. It's like having your children. Like, trademark and copyright are in a lot of ways the children of your business. When you have a baby, you can't leave the hospital without a car seat. They aren't going to let you. They're going to make you put that baby in a car seat. So when you have any of your intellectual property, think of it as your child, and it's got to go in a car seat. Now, for characters, you have a choice of, do you want a copyright car seat or a trademark car seat? Or would you like a trademark car seat with maybe copyright straps? Because you can do it differently. And that's where you want someone who knows business, who knows your short and long-term goals, who knows the law, that can say, hey, like again, interior design, ladies. The law is interior design. And that's where you go, oh, yeah, I know you thought you wanted that dark gray couch, you wanted to copyright that character, but in this room, with what you're doing, I think if we go with a light tan, you'll be much happier. Mm-hmm. That is what business lawyers should do for you. It's not about their forms. Goodness, you can Google and get any silly little form you want. You want someone that can say, oh, okay, Bethany, tell me about what you're creating. Okay, tell me what you're building. How are you using this? Where is it going? What are you doing? That can see all of this and say, oh yeah, yep, you've created this little character. You know what? With the way law is now, let's do a trademark car seat. Mm-hmm. And that is a way better protection than the copyright car seat for various different reasons.
Makes so much sense. I love that explanation. All right, so it is at the top of the hour, and we've got more questions. So we're going to go off the recording and have a few minutes in our after party so everyone can come in, do just maybe 10 to 15 minutes more, and then we'll release Tamsen from Writers Chat. But thanks so much for coming in. It's always a pleasure having you on here. I just learned so much, and I want everyone to make sure that you're getting the links in the chat, and we'll also get them into the Facebook group as well so that you guys people who are watching the replay can get that too. So Tamsen, thanks so much. It was amazing.
You are so welcome.
I don't think I can stop recording.